Hello and welcome to the latest in our series of programs produced with XpertRule software on the way the challenge, indeed the imperative of net zero can be managed by manufacturers and what kind of help is out there for them. Now, clearly, investment can be an issue, and I'm pleased to welcome Lloyds Bank's Head of Manufacturing, Dave Atkinson, who works closely with XpertRule in helping manufacturers get started on their journey with the maximum of efficiency and result. And of course, as always, we're joined by Ian Crossley of XpertRule. Dave, can I start with you? I know banks are always there to provide finance to manufacturers, but Lloyds seem to be taking the net zero issue particularly seriously.
I'll start by just sort of replaying the fact that we are a purpose-led organisation, and our overarching purpose is around helping Britain prosper. But it's a little deeper than that, and we are actually doing this by creating a more sustainable and inclusive future for people and businesses. And I guess the way we demonstrate, sort of creating finance as a force for good, is by creating an environment where we not only demonstrate what we are doing by getting our house in order and making our own personal commitments as a bank, but are investing heavily both to understand how SMEs and particularly SME manufacturers are feeling at the moment, and then responding by shaping and creating a number of initiatives to help them on that journey. We know that SMEs are desperate for help and guidance, as well as being really clear that they are starting to understand the importance and the opportunities from this net zero journey.
What are the key findings that have popped up for you and your colleagues in this process?
It's quite timely, actually, Nick, because we've just done some sort of fresh research to help us understand where our SME manufacturing clients are in the current stage of this journey. And it's really pleasing that 96% of those that we have consulted with are now really clear about they know and understand net zero and sort of what it means to them. And nearly 90% equally are saying that this is really important, and we know that we have to respond to this, not just from a commercial point of view, but actually ethically. We want to do the right thing. And about 60% of them have already said that in response to understanding not just the challenges and the need for this, but also the opportunities that it presents, 60% have now designed and developed their own plan to get there. Equally, just over half of those, around 36%, have already identified that they understand the impact of net zero on their own brand as a business, and not just from a commerciality point of view, but from an ethical point of view. The skills agenda, as we all know, is a massive challenge to businesses, and labour supply is a real challenge. And actually, the tables have been turned for many of these small businesses when they do find suitable potential employees, whether they be apprentices or others. They're having the tables turned on them, and the interviewee is now becoming the interviewer, asking them what they're doing on this journey to net zero, because again, from the ethical point of view, people want to protect the planet and do the right things and create an environment for their families and their long-term future. I think some of this is already being reflected in where a number of manufacturers have got to. Around 7% are now already at net zero, and 27% have got a really clear target in mind as to when they are going to get, or certainly work towards, getting to net zero. And I think the benefits that they're telling us around this journey that they're on, 63% are telling us that they have now seen real benefits in terms of waste reduction and energy reduction. And 19% are already seeing actual monetary savings from the investments that they've made. So I think it's clear that SMEs are well on the way to understanding what the journey needs to be, but equally, a lot of them are still just crying out for that help, support and guidance. Let's face it, SMEs don't have the resource and the cash and the expertise around them like some of the bigger businesses. So they are looking for help and guidance and support. And I think the conversation that we're having today hopefully will help stimulate a few to reflect and think about just what that help and support could be and what's available out there.
Ian Crossley, fascinating statistics that Dave's just come up with. What comes up for you as particular highlights of what he said?
Well, I think the fact that a relatively high number are starting on the journeys, but I suppose really when you're looking at that, they're really talking about scope 1 and 2 for them. And obviously that's the start point of the journey. They obviously, ultimately, if they're going to take their products into this, will have to take into scope 3 as well. And it's how they really address those challenges and where they go to them, because the ones that they're directly in control of are relatively straightforward to do things about and mitigate. It's the ones that they're not directly in control of. So it's how are they considering those, and where are they going with those?
I must say, Dave, I was struck by the fantastic ambition on behalf of the companies you spoke with, but ambition doesn't always equal execution, as we know. And you've pointed out some of the biggest pitfalls, which of course are really around resources and skills. I mean, does Lloyds have any thoughts around that? What do you see as a way forward that SME manufacturers can look to, perhaps, as a way of shaping the future?
First of all, if I may just think about the different scopes that the SME manufacturers have to impact on here, and we all know that there are 3 of these. One is their direct impact, one is their energy provider, really, and the third is the supply chains that they operate in. And I think it's really important to understand that manufacturers, and certainly from our recent conversations and research, almost half have been asked to report on their progress around ESG in the last 12 months. And I think that's a big indication that scope 3, as Ian has just commented on, is becoming ever more important as some of those bigger businesses are having to start to think about how they reduce not just their own sort of direct carbon and emissions and sustainability programs, but also the complex web of supply chains that they operate in, and the challenges of some of those transport costs that all businesses are facing into. I think if I respond more directly about what sort of things do we see happening and what are we doing to try and help those manufacturers, I think the one big thing they cry out for is collaboration. And this is about the supply chains helping each other. And it doesn't necessarily have to impact competitiveness here. This is about sharing best practice, and actually the supply chains that they are supplying into, sharing with them some of the things that they have been doing in order to reduce their own carbon, so they can repeat that best practice. And if it's tried and tested, it creates a less risky cost environment to the SMEs that are just resource poor. I think the other things as well is thinking about investment. We know that there's good liquidity around the sector at the moment, and I think manufacturers are still benefiting from some of the huge challenges that they faced into through the COVID impact. But as a consequence of that, they have made some really tough decisions and rationalised a lot of their expenses and have benefited in terms of cost reduction, which has helped them gone through the recent challenges of the cost of living sort of increases that we are all still sort of faced into and challenging. But as a consequence of that, they do have cash available to invest. But equally, we want to help them with that. So any initiatives that SMEs come to with us, we're happy to engage in those discussions and make finance much more affordable to them by removing arrangement fees or reducing interest costs for acceptable projects that make those reductions. I think the other thing to reflect on is one of the biggest carbon emitters for businesses is their own premises. And again, we have got a specific tool available to help them understand what impacts could be made to their own business premises, and what impact that would have on carbon reduction and EPC ratings, which not only reduces costs, but also helps them reduce carbon and can give them some quite clear, tangible results from sometimes quite small investments, which can impact on their own ESG reporting. As I mentioned, they're being demanded, which is being demanded from them more and more and more sort of recently. So I think there are some really simple things that we have already started to do alongside educating our managers to understand some of the challenges, but equally we're trying to provide some propositional offerings to support them and help them with that guidance. And certainly, again, from the research, 62% are telling us that they see banks generally supporting them, which is fantastic news. We're all in this together. But equally, they are looking to us and others in industry for more help, advice and support.
Ian, I just want to pick up on something that Dave said about collaboration along supply chains. It's absolutely vital, if that is going to happen, that people are operating with clear data, offering them clear decision-making paths, and in a way that has a common approach almost, so that we can match apples and apples and pears with pears.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I think that when people go on these journeys, it's important that they measure the improvements they make and they sustain those improvements. So it's important that there's visibility of what they're doing and how they're going about it and where they go. I think there is a challenge between all these people in the sense that they will all have challenges, but the scale of those challenges will vary. So if you talk about cost, quality and delivery, they're the same things that everybody will be considering, but they'll be in a different ratio in each case, depending on where they are and what they're doing and what they're supplying and the industries they're supplying into. So if you like, there's probably an overall template that can apply to them, which then needs fine tuning to their actual needs. And whatever they put into that then needs to be measured and monitored and maintained.
Dave, the companies you spoke with, you and your colleagues at Lloyds, are they alive to the importance of data acquisition, management, and accurate analysis in this process?
Oh, they're very, very attuned to the need to start to record and measure not just the starting point, but equally then the improvements that they are making. So the supply chains are demanding that. They're keen to be able to demonstrate it, and equally many are all too well aware that they get left behind on this journey at their peril. I think there was a famous quote from Mark Carney when he was setting up the Bank of England some years ago that basically just said that SMEs that don't adapt will die and they'll go bankrupt. It was a very, very pointed message on the front page of the newspapers at the time. I'm sure you'll find it if you Google it, and I think it's starting to resonate more and more and more with SMEs. And I think the statistics from our recent research gives us great confidence that these SME manufacturers are really keen to do this. Many are already on that journey, but the measurement can create some challenges. It can create some additional work that, again, I'm sorry to repeat this, but our SMEs are the lifeblood and the backbone of this country, and they need the help and support to do this. And measurement is can be quite a complex process. And I think there's so many tools out there that, again, they just need a little bit of help and guidance in showing how, but they definitely understand the importance, and many are already starting to do that. So much so that we have invested recently, and we're partway through a pilot with clients at the moment. It's in the public domain, so I don't mind sort of sharing it. But clients that bank with us, we've developed a tool in conjunction with one of the big universities that help us create a starting point and actually calculate a client's estimated carbon emissions based on the transactions through their bank account. And those that have now opted to receive these reports are seeing that it's of great benefit, and of course we're really keen to roll that out and expand that proposition for our clients even further, knowing how important the SMEs, coming back to your question, are seeing the importance of actually measuring this and having that starting point and demonstrating those improvements for their supply chains, particularly as Scope 3 reporting becomes ever more important.
Well, Dave Atkinson, thank you very much indeed for joining in and myself in this conversation. Fantastic insights from Lloyd's Research. We're very grateful to you. Thanks very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share a few words.
My thanks as ever to Ian Crossley from XpertRule Software, and of course to you for watching. On behalf of Manufacturing TV, I'm Nick Peters. Goodbye for now.